into earnings season, we will always see that some kind of disparaging article about companies just as they're about to report earnings. Sometimes the articles are rehashing of old articles, and sometimes the articles are news just held in waiting to be released right about a week before earnings to lower the price of the stock so the money managers could pick it up cheap. I've seen it so many times. Look, I actually think I'm becoming a stock market conspiracy theorist or something. Well, here's a story about Bank of America that just so happened to come out last week right before earnings. So let's get into it. If you've been on unemployment in the past decade or so, you probably have received your unemployment funds in the form of a debit card. I seriously think this is the dumbest idea for anyone to receive funds, but oh boy, it's really, really good for the bank issuing the funds that comes from the state unemployment fund, but not so good for you. The bank, of course, gets fees on some of the purchases as well as ATM withdrawal fees. The bank also gets to have the funds sitting in their bank, making what's called a sweep interest as they buy and sell bonds overnight with the funds. Also, the banks love the idea of, being chosen by the various state governments to issue these cards. For the consumer, it couldn't be a dumber way to get your funds. Besides the possible bank fees, you could lose the card or the card could be electronically stolen and you could find your card wiped clean with no funds to access. These cards are not chip cards when they're issued, so they're easily cloned by nefarious card readers. Because of the likelihood of these cards being stolen, Bank of America, who had contracts with 12 of the most active states like California, were issuing these cards. It had some fraud detection programs and software trying to prevent fraud. Well, instead of preventing fraud, many of the unemployment beneficiaries during the scamdemic found their card funds frozen because of the faulty fraud detection system would shut down their cards and their access to their funds. So not only were these people out of work by faulty government, their funds were frozen by a faulty bank system. There were people who could not access their money. Being the time of the great scamdemic, there were no bank branches open and customer service teams were either working from home or not working at all. This led to honest citizens with the unemployment fund cards not being able to access these funds. Some stories include people who were buying groceries and found their card did not work and they had to leave without their groceries. Other stories have people stuck without being able to buy gas. So now federal regulators fined Bank of America $225 million for botching the disbursement of state unemployment benefits at the height of the pandemic. The bank actually responded with this statement. The states were responsible for reviewing and approving applications and directing Bank of America to issue payments. As such, Bank of America said it helped the government to successfully issue more than $250 billion $250 billion in pandemic unemployment benefits to more than 14 million people and overall distributed the more pandemic relief than any other bank to Americans. This action, obviously the action of the fines is what they're talking about, arose despite the government's own acknowledgement that unemployment expansion during the pandemic created unprecedented criminal activity where illegal applicants were able to get states to approve tens of billions of dollars in payments. Bank of America said, adding to that, it partnered with our state clients to identify and fight fraud throughout the pandemic. Well, the bank will probably just pay the fine and be over with. But I wonder if the people who have put out and had these problems will see any of that fine money as restitution. Or does the government just use the victims as a way to extort money from the bank? Yeah, probably. I'd bet in the future the cards will have chips in them. By the way, I'm a firm believer in never having a debit card. Never have a debit card. Debit cards are made to make the bank money and not for your convenience. I go into some depth about this in investor schooling, but it's my suggestion to play everything with credit cards, not debit cards. If your credit card gets coned or stolen, it wasn't your money that the bad guys took. It was the bank's money and you aren't responsible for it. If your debit card gets stolen, even the bank replaces the money. But even if the bank replaces the money, it could take up to 30 days before you can get it. And that's just one of the reasons to use credit cards and not debit cards. Take a good look at that.